Hi, my name is Ivana Dragsić. I'm a sociologist, civil operator, and a DJ from Skopje. First question, what is for you culture of solidarity in these times and how can we produce it? Um, a culture of solidarity in general, not only in these times, um, is a place where we can socially and emotionally regulate and co-regulate, attune with ourselves and with the others in our everyday lives, but also in bigger systems and structures such as institution, market, production, profession, and so on. It is a place where we learn to uh, contribute to a bigger, to a shared pool of resources with the very little that we have, expertise, social capital, skill, which so this shared pool of resources is also a very diverse one, which makes us resilient to big narratives, mythomanias, but also crisis situations. The culture of solidarity is a place of conviviality, um, far from the Anthropocene and with regard of the rights and potentials of the historically disenfranchised or pushed back communities. Um, it is a place. It is a place where another world is possible, but it is actively being worked on, which means that that's the answer to the question, how can we produce it? We're already producing and reproducing the culture of solidarity, except that we're maybe not calling it that way. Maybe we should add the word industry to it so that our ministries and financial gurus will recognize it. However, I think we need to recognize, articulate, and put in place a language, but also a value system um, that will establish the culture of solidarity as such. Question number two, what knowledge do we produce in culture and art now? How should we produce and distribute the knowledge? Uh, I think the most significant thing being produced in art and culture at the moment is imagination and resilience. We can call that knowledge. I just want to say that I think that the arts and the culture, both from its topical discursive side, but also from its aspect of applied practices and modes of work, provides for a wide spectrum of possibilities and institutional and social imagination, which is a prerequisite to some kind of institutional innovation, or at least for a framework to rethink those things. And also, in this context, it does provide some kind of economic and social resilience. Um, the people living and working mostly in the gray areas of the social of the national state systems of social and economic security and well-being have forced us, made us create a certain pool of information, data analysis, practices, principles of work, which can be called knowledge and which are also transferred generationally, but not by blood generations, but as first wave, second wave feminists, third wave feminists, and we can see those things happening in the various specific fields of the arts and culture. Um, however, I think this knowledge that's being produced is a knowledge of resilience, a knowledge of reacting, a knowledge of handling situation. I think it has a good distribution. Maybe it can go better, but I think what it needs is to reformulate itself and reestablish itself, not as a struggle but more as a principle of work, as a policy, as a strategy, as a society, as a community, or as a cooperative. Question number 3, what did we learn from the crisis? Can we develop post-crisis modes and conditions of art and cultural production which will allow basic sustainability and reduce the precarious position of cultural workers and artists? I think we all learned that living on a universal basic income is not impossible, and many learned why is it called basic. However, I'm quite insecure and pessimistic about what we have learned collectively here, or if we have learned anything at all. Gaining impressions or insight into something doesn't equal knowledge, gaining knowledge, and I think we are more on this side of gaining an impression of what it's like to live a more differently structured life. I think add to that the loss of socialization, even the illusion of security, regular income, structured days, with affected mental health or at least stability. It doesn't necessarily have to end with people giving constructive suggestions or proposals or methodologies or strategies about handling such situations in the future. But it also makes them more susceptible to commodification. I think and I'm witnessing that. This idealist things that I'm answering to the other questions are things that I'm thinking about, but I'm witnessing in my environment is complete commodification of the worries and problems, or the scarcity of things. And that's what worries me the most, because I think commodification is one of the most difficult obstacles to tackle on the way to reforming or reshaping political contexts. However, I would like to take away 3 things which should be taken into consideration when maybe creating new models of production and work in the arts and culture, and those are a universal basic income, public space in all of its forms, physical and other, especially in times of specifically regulated behavior, but also in times of freedom, public funding for that matter, and conviviality, which is institutionalization of our experiences of interassistance, informal cooperation, solidarity, and so on. Question number 4. Does the COVID crisis bring forward the idea of social equality, social states, and UBI? How can it be reflected in culture and arts? Of course, it brought into focus these topics of UBI and social equality and social inequality the most. It was even on the covers of some of the most conservative financial magazines in the recent times. It definitely must be reflected in arts and culture. I precisely don't know how, but I'm thinking that we must again start with repeating that production in this realm is not some enlightenment from above, but it's a substantive amount of labor, skills, knowledge, combined with everyday visible and invisible parameters such as class, family situation, emotional state, disabilities, and abilities. We must reform the valorization mechanisms we have put in place as nations, nation states, societies, which has happened mostly in times of wars or at an early stage of industrialization, before the World Wide Web happened to us, such as GDP, market value, and other equally commodifying to generally harmful phenomena, and establish a new value system, one in which well-being is not only for humans and is not only calculated through economic formula, but reflected in real life as well. We have to create a framework in which we don't have to call ourselves an industry, a creative industry, in order to be recognized as wealth creators or workers. Question number 5. What political policy approaches would you foresee for the future in the field you work, or how should it be changed in the future? Obviously, if the science data suggests more of these crisis situations in the future, the whole physical setup of whatever we do, produce, perform, should be reorganized, maybe placed in different environments, or maybe even the audience choreography or behavior should be adjusted to the new conditions. Again, I must reinstate or reclaim the position of the public space and public funding for that matter, both as a place of production and as a place of presentation, performing of cultural and artworks. Discursively, we must continue challenging big narratives that tend to erase everything other than the mainstream or commodify our struggles, to say the very least. Reforms are in order, but they must be structural and intersectional, because a change in the cultural policy of my country is not possible without a significant change in the educational system, the socioeconomic structure, or in a seriously harmed or endangered natural environment. The roles and the positions of the institutions should have been challenged by now in the first place, or at least reevaluated. I guess the pandemic just accelerated our transition towards more aware cultural workers, even advocates for a social state, or maybe even a socialist one.